The red sky above planet Velthora was getting darker every day. Strange lights danced across the heavens as their sun began to die. In the last communication center still working on the planet, Kethmore pressed his 6 fingers against the crystal controls. His large compound eyes reflected the blinking lights from the machines around him. "How much time do we have left?" asked Velnora from across the room. Her voice was soft and musical, but filled with sadness. Kethmore looked at the readings on his screen. Numbers that meant death for everyone on their world. 6 days. Maybe 7 if we are lucky. Around them, other Velthrans worked quickly at their stations. They moved with grace despite their fear. Their bodies were tall and thin, with skin that changed colors like the surface of water. Right now, everyone's skin showed deep blues and grays. The colors of grief. For thousands of years, the Velthrans had built amazing things. Their cities floated in the air using gravity machines. Their artists could make light dance in patterns that told stories. Their scientists understood secrets of the universe that took other species millions of years to learn. But none of it could save them now. Their sun was collapsing. It would become what humans called a neutron star. The process would destroy everything in their solar system. Other species might have built giant ships to escape to distant worlds. But Velthrans could not survive long journeys through space. Their bodies needed the exact air mixture of their home planet. No ship could carry enough people far enough to find a new world like theirs. So they were going to die. All of them. But Kethmore had a different plan. If they could not save their bodies, maybe they could save their minds. Their culture. Their history. Everything that made them who they were. "The transmission array is ready," called out Zinare from the main control station. Her skin flickered between orange and yellow. The colors of determination. Kethmore nodded and began typing commands into his console. 4 months, every Velthran on the planet had been working on this project. They had gathered all their knowledge into one massive digital library. Every book ever written. Every song ever sung. Every scientific discovery. Every piece of art. Every story told to children at bedtime. They had also done something else. Something that had never been tried before. They had found a way to record the thoughts and memories of individual people. Not complete minds, but shadows of consciousness. Echoes of who they had been in life. "Beginning compression sequence," announced Velnora. The machines around them hummed louder. Power flowed from the planet's dying energy grid into the transmission equipment. Kethmore watched as petabytes of data compressed into quantum information packets. The entire history of his people, reduced to signals that could travel at the speed of light across the galaxy. It would take decades, maybe centuries, for the transmission to reach other worlds. And there was no guarantee that anyone would be listening. But it was their only hope. "Kethmore," said a small voice behind him. He turned to see young Pixie, barely past childhood, holding a small crystal device. "I recorded my last poem. Can it go with the others?" Kethmore felt his skin shift to soft purple. The color of love and protection. "Of course, little one. Every voice matters." He took the crystal and connected it to the main system. Pixie's poem joined millions of other final messages. Parents saying goodbye to children who had died before them. Artists sharing their last creations. Scientists explaining their final theories. "All systems ready," reported Zinare. "Target coordinates locked on promising star systems within 1,000 light-years." Kethmore placed his hand on the transmission control. This was it. Their last act as a living civilization. He thought about all the Velthrans who had lived and died on this world over thousands of years. All their hopes and dreams and discoveries. All of it would soon exist only as radio waves crossing the empty darkness between stars. "To anyone who receives this message," he spoke into the recording device, "we are the Velthrans of the 4th planet of the star you may call Velthora. We created beauty. We sought truth. We loved deeply. Our sun is dying, and we cannot escape. But we do not want to be forgotten. Please, if you find this message, remember that we were here. Remember that we tried to make the universe a little brighter." He pressed the transmission button. Across the planet, every remaining power source fed energy into the communication array. The quantum-compressed data began its journey into space, splitting into thousands of identical signals aimed at different star systems. Each signal carried the complete cultural heritage of the Velthran people. As the transmission continued, the ground beneath them shook. Their sun pulsed with unstable energy. Cracks appeared in the walls of the communication center. But the equipment kept working, kept sending their message into the void. "It is done," whispered Velnora, watching the progress indicators on her screen. "Our voices are traveling to the stars." Kethmore nodded, feeling both sadness and peace. They had done everything they could. Somewhere out there, maybe someone would hear their call. Maybe someone would care enough to answer. The transmission completed just as the first shock wave from their dying sun reached their planet. In their final moments, the last Velthrans looked up at the stars and hoped that they would not die completely alone. Dr. Daehyun Kim was drinking his third cup of coffee when the computer made a sound he had never heard before. It was 2:30 in the morning at the Seoul Deep Space Monitoring Station, and he was the only person awake in the entire building. The sound came again. A soft beeping that meant the system had found something unusual. He walked over to his workstation and looked at the screen. Strange patterns moved across the display. Not the usual random noise from space. This was different. This was organized. This was a signal. No way, he whispered to himself. For 3 months, Daehyun had been studying this particular signal. It came from a star system 847 light-years away. The signal was incredibly complex, filled with mathematical patterns that seemed almost too perfect to be natural. But it had taken all this time for the computer to decode even small parts of it. Now, looking at his screen, he could see that the computer had finally broken through. The alien symbols were being translated into Korean text. And what he was reading made his hands shake. "We are dying. Our sun collapses. We send you our memories." Daehyun sat down heavily in his chair. This was it. This was proof that humans were not alone in the universe. But it was not the kind of proof anyone had hoped for. This was a death message. He picked up his phone and called Dr. Park Hyun-woo, his research partner. The phone rang 6 times before a sleepy voice answered. "Hyun-woo, you need to get here right now," Daehyun said. "It's almost 3 in the morning," Hyun-woo complained. "The signal from the Velthra system. I cracked it. They're not random patterns. They're files. Cultural files. Art, science, everything." The line was quiet for a moment. Then Hyun-woo said, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. By dawn, word had spread through the Seoul scientific community. Dr. Sujin Lee arrived first. She was the best language expert in Korea, maybe in all of Asia. When she saw the translated text on the screen, she sat down and started crying. "Look at the timestamp," she said through her tears. "This message is 57 years old. They've been dead for decades." More scientists arrived as the morning continued. The director of the Space Center came. Officials from the Korean government. Even reporters, though they were kept away from the actual data. As the computer continued translating, the true scope of the discovery became clear. The Velthrans had sent their entire civilization in this one transmission. Poetry that made emotions visible as light. Mathematical equations that could predict the behavior of black holes. Art forms that humans had never imagined. "Why would they do this?" asked Dr. Young Sahan, the center's director. "Why send everything to strangers?" Dr. Sujin Lee had been reading the personal messages included in the transmission. Final thoughts from individual Velthrans. Last words from parents to children. Dreams that would never come true. "Because they didn't want to be forgotten," she said quietly. "Every file contains the same basic message. Please remember that we existed." Hyun-woo was studying the technical specifications that came with the cultural data. Their science is incredible. Some of these equations are centuries ahead of anything we have. If we can understand even half of this, it could change everything for humanity. But Daehyun was not thinking about the scientific benefits. He was thinking about the faces in the personal files. Alien faces, but somehow familiar. Parents who looked worried. Children who looked curious. Artists who looked proud of their work. All of them gone now. "We have to do something," he said suddenly. "What do you mean?" asked Director Han. "We can't just study their data and forget about them. They reached out to us. They trusted us with their entire culture. We owe them something." Dr. Sujin Lee looked up from her translations. "What are you suggesting?" Daehyun walked over to the big screen where alien text scrolled past in endless streams. "We should go there. To their system. Maybe there are artifacts left. Maybe there are automated systems still running. Maybe there's more to discover." "That's impossible," Director Han said. "It would take decades to get there. The cost would be enormous." "So what?" Daehyun replied. "These people died alone, afraid that no one would ever know they existed. The least we can do is visit their graves." Dr. Sujin Lee stood up slowly. "He's right. How can we just sit here reading their final messages and do nothing? They called out into the darkness, and we heard them. We should answer." Over the following weeks, the Korean team worked with scientists around the world to understand the full scope of the Velthren transmission. The data contained blueprints for technologies humans had never imagined. Medical knowledge that could save millions of lives. Environmental solutions that could help heal Earth's damaged climate. But for Dae-hyun and his team, the technology was not the point. The point was the message hidden in every file. The desperate hope of a dying people that someone, somewhere, would care enough to remember them. 3 months after the discovery, Dr. Dae-hyun Kim stood before the Global Space Coalition in Geneva. Behind him, a holographic display showed images from the Velthren transmission. Beautiful cities floating in alien skies. Creatures that looked almost like humans, but with rainbow skin and large, kind eyes. They didn't send us this message asking for technology or trade, he told the assembled delegates. They sent it asking for something much simpler. They asked us to remember them. I think we should answer. The vote was closer than anyone expected. But in the end, humanity decided to reach back across the void. The mission to the Velthra system was approved. The Starship Eternal Memory was the largest vessel humanity had ever built for deep space travel. It stretched over 2 kilometers from nose to tail, filled with laboratories, living quarters, and massive engines that could push it to nearly 20% of light speed. But even at that incredible velocity, the journey to the Velthra system would take 43 years. Captain Jin Ho-on stood on the bridge, watching Earth grow smaller through the main viewport. At 35 years old, he was young for a starship captain. But he had volunteered knowing that he would spend most of his adult life on this mission. By the time they returned to Earth, he would be an old man. All systems green, Captain, reported Navigation Officer Minitsu Park. Course locked for the Velthra system. Behind them, 60 crew members prepared for the longest journey in human history. Scientists, engineers, archaeologists, linguists, and cultural experts. All of them had left behind families and careers to answer the call of a dead alien civilization. Dr. Sujin Lee walked through the ship's main corridor, checking on the different departments. At 42, she was now the mission director, responsible for coordinating all scientific activities during their journey. The weight of that responsibility sometimes kept her awake at night. She stopped at the Cultural Analysis Lab, where Dr. Hwon Kim was studying Velthran poetry. The alien words floated in holographic displays around him, slowly being translated into Korean and English. Any new discoveries? Dr. Lee asked. Hwon looked up from his work. Their poetry is amazing. It's not just words. It includes instructions for creating light patterns and sound frequencies. When you follow the instructions, the poem becomes a complete sensory experience. Dr. Lee nodded. During the 3 years since Earth had received the Velthran transmission, human scientists had barely scratched the surface of what the aliens had sent. Every file revealed new wonders. Art forms that engaged all 5 senses. Mathematics that seemed to describe the universe in ways humans had never considered. Philosophy that offered new perspectives on existence itself. Why do you think they included so much? Hwon asked. They could have just sent basic information about their species. Instead, they sent everything. Because they wanted us to understand them completely, Dr. Lee replied. Not just know that they existed, but understand who they were as people. In the ship's recreation area, Engineer Jae-won Choi was explaining the mission to his 7-year-old daughter through a video call. The communication delay with Earth was now several minutes, but families could still stay in contact during the early years of the journey. When will you come home, Daddy? Little Sominit asked on the screen. Jae-won smiled sadly. Not for a long time, sweetheart. But I'm doing something very important. I'm going to visit the home of some friends who lived very far away. Are they nice friends? Very nice. They made beautiful things and discovered amazing secrets about space. But they got sick and died before we could meet them. So we're going to their house to make sure people remember them. Sominit thought about this seriously. That's good, Daddy. Everyone should be remembered. As the months passed, the crew settled into their routines. Half the ship's population was always in stasis sleep, conserving resources and aging more slowly. The other half maintained the ship and continued studying Velthran culture. Every 6 months, they would switch places. Dr. Lee spent her active periods learning everything she could about the aliens who had sent the message. The Velthrans had been peaceful explorers, spreading slowly through their solar system over thousands of years. They had never developed weapons of war because they had never encountered another intelligent species. Their entire philosophy was built around the idea that consciousness was the universe's way of understanding itself. They would have loved to meet us, she told Captain On during one of their regular briefings. All their writings talk about their desire to find other thinking beings. They dreamed of the conversations they could have, the things they could learn together. Captain On was reviewing the ship's long-term supplies. Do you think we're doing the right thing? Spending 43 years to visit a dead world. Dr. Lee looked out at the stars streaming past the viewport. I think about that every day. We could have stayed on Earth and used their technology to improve human life. Their medical knowledge alone could save millions of people. But that's not what they asked for. They didn't send us their knowledge as a gift. They sent it as a message. Remember us. How can we remember them properly if we never visit their home? 20 years into the journey, the crew had grown older and closer together. Some had married and started families aboard the ship. Others had dedicated themselves completely to understanding Velthran culture. The ship had become a traveling university, with experts teaching each other about alien art, science, and philosophy. Engineer Minitsu Park, now in his 50s, had spent decades studying Velthran technology. I think I understand why their civilization was so advanced, he told the weekly science meeting. They never competed with each other. Every discovery was shared immediately with everyone. They built on each other's work instead of fighting over it. When the eternal memory finally reached the Velthra system, the crew gathered on the bridge to see their destination. What they found was both beautiful and terrible. Where once a yellow sun had burned, a neutron star now pulsed with deadly radiation. The Velthran homeworld was a blackened rock, its surface scoured clean by the stellar collapse. The floating cities were gone. The singing forests were gone. Everything was gone. But in the outer reaches of the system, their sensors detected something unexpected. Artificial signals, weak but persistent, still broadcasting into space after all these years. Automated archive stations, whispered Dr. Lee, reading the sensor data. They're still working. Captain On smiled for the first time in months. Then we haven't come all this way for nothing. The first archive station looked like a giant silver flower floating in the darkness of space. Its metal petals stretched out toward the distant neutron star, covered with sensors and communication arrays. It had been broadcasting weekly for over 50 years, powered by solar collectors that still gathered energy from the deadly stellar remnant. Engineer Jae-won Choi guided the shuttle carefully toward the ancient structure. His hands were steady on the controls, but his heart was beating fast. This was the closest any human had ever come to actual alien technology. The station is responding to our signals, reported Dr. Sujin Lee from the co-pilot seat. It's trying to establish communication protocols. After all these years, it still works, whispered pilot So-young Kim. She was the youngest member of the team, born on Earth just 2 years before the Velthran signal had arrived. They built things to last. The shuttle docked with the station through an airlock that seemed designed for beings much taller than humans. As they entered, their helmet lights revealed corridors filled with crystalline storage devices. Each crystal pulsed with soft light, containing terabytes of Velthran memories. This is incredible, Dr. Lee said, running her scanner over the nearest crystal array. These aren't just data storage units. They're quantum consciousness matrices. Jae-won looked confused. What does that mean? It means they found a way to record thoughts and memories as quantum information. Not just the data, but the actual patterns of consciousness that created the data. They spent hours collecting samples and connecting their equipment to the alien systems. When they returned to the eternal memory, Jae-won began the delicate work of interfacing human computers with Velthran technology. For 3 weeks, he worked 18 hours a day in his laboratory. The alien systems used principles of quantum computing that humans barely understood. But slowly, carefully, he began to decode the consciousness patterns stored in the crystals. I think I have something, he announced during the morning briefing. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but his voice was excited. The patterns aren't complete minds. They're more like echoes. Final thoughts and memories that were recorded just before death. Captain Jin Ho-on leaned forward in his chair. You mean there are actual Velthran personalities in those crystals? Fragments of personalities. Like shadows of who they used to be. Dr. Lee felt a chill run down her spine. Can you communicate with them? Jae-won nodded slowly. I think so. But we need to be very careful. These consciousness patterns have been isolated for over 50 years. We don't know how they'll react to contact. The first attempt at communication took place in the ship's main computer lab. The entire senior staff gathered around Jae-won's workstation as he activated the interface protocols. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then text began appearing on the screen. Where am I? Dr. Lee stepped closer to the screen. Hello. My name is Sujin. I am human. We received your message. The text paused for a long moment. Then more words appeared, faster now. Human? You are, not Veltheran. You came from another world? Yes. We came from a planet called Earth. We traveled for over 40 years to reach your system. 40 years? You traveled 40 years, just to answer our call? Dr. Lee felt tears in her eyes. Yes. We didn't want you to be forgotten. The screen filled with symbols that the computer couldn't translate. Then, slowly, new text appeared. I am Kethmore. I sent the original transmission. I cannot believe, someone actually came. Over the following days, more consciousness fragments awakened as J1 refined his communication systems. Each one reacted with amazement and gratitude that humans had crossed the galaxy to find them. Velnora, the scientist who had helped prepare the transmission. Zinare, an artist who had encoded her final paintings into the quantum matrices. Even young Pixien, the child who had recorded her last poem. We thought we would drift in darkness forever, transmitted Velnora's fragment. When our bodies died, we uploaded our final thoughts hoping that maybe, someday, someone would find them. But we never truly believed it would happen. Pilot So Young Kim spent hours talking with Pixien's consciousness pattern. Despite being recorded over 50 years ago, the young Veltheran's personality was curious and playful. What is it like being human? Pixien asked. Not so different from being Veltheran, I think, So Young replied. We wonder about things. We create art. We love our families. Do you have families on your world? So Young smiled. Yes. I have parents and a younger brother. They're very far away now. You left your family to come find us? That makes me sad and happy at the same time. The consciousness fragments shared stories of their final days. How the children had been the bravest, comforting the adults instead of the other way around. How artists had worked frantically to preserve their greatest works. How scientists had uploaded their unfinished theories, hoping someone else might complete them. We were so afraid of being alone, transmitted Kethmore. Not of dying. We accepted death. But of being completely forgotten, as if we had never existed at all. Dr. Lee found herself staying up late talking with the fragments. They asked endless questions about human culture, about Earth, about what humans had learned from the Veltheran transmission. You studied our poetry? Asked Zinare. Did you understand the light patterns? Some of them. Human scientists have been learning to create art the way you did. Your techniques inspired new forms of expression on our world. Our art lives on another world? In the hands of another species? Yes. And not just art. Your mathematics helped us understand space better. Your philosophy changed how many humans think about consciousness and existence. The fragment was quiet for a long time. Then, we are not truly dead, then. Parts of us continue in your people. Captain On watched his crew's interactions with the consciousness fragments and felt a profound sense of accomplishment. They had traveled farther than any humans in history, not for conquest or resources, but simply to keep a promise to the dead. Thank you, transmitted Kethmore during their final communication session. You have given us the greatest gift possible. You have proven that consciousness reaches across the void to touch consciousness. That intelligence cares for intelligence, even across species and time. As the eternal memory prepared to leave the Velthera system, the crew carefully packed thousands of consciousness crystals for the journey home. The fragments would finally leave their lonely vigil among the dead worlds and join the living universe once again. 23 years had passed since the eternal memory returned to Earth. Dr. Sujin Lee, now 78 years old, walked slowly through the Veltheran Memorial Hall in Seoul. Her hair was completely white, and she needed a walking stick, but her eyes were still bright with curiosity. Around her, human children played games that the young Veltheran Pixien had taught them through the consciousness fragments. They drew pictures using light patterns that made emotions visible in the air. They solved math problems using Veltheran number systems that seemed to dance across their tablets. Grandmother Lee, called 8-year-old Hao Kim, running up to her with a drawing tablet. Look what I made. The tablet showed a poem written in flowing Veltheran script. When Hao touched a button, the words transformed into swirling colors and gentle music. It's beautiful, dear, Dr. Lee said, smiling. What is the poem about? It's about friendship across the stars. My teacher says the Veltherans would have been proud. Dr. Lee nodded. The Veltheran consciousness fragments had become beloved teachers and friends to humans around the world. Through quantum communication networks, people could talk with Kethmore about science, learn art techniques from Zinare, or hear stories from dozens of other preserved minds. The alien knowledge had transformed human civilization. Velthran medicine had eliminated most cancers. Their environmental technologies were helping heal Earth's damaged climate. Their mathematics had led to breakthrough discoveries in physics and engineering. But more important than the technology was what humans had learned about compassion. The story of the dying Velthrans and humanity's 40-year journey to find them had become legend. It reminded everyone that no thinking being should face extinction alone. Dr. Lee called a young man from across the hall. It was Dr. Jun-Ho Park, the current director of the Seoul Deep Space Monitoring Station. "We need to see you right away." Dr. Lee looked concerned. Jun-Ho's face was serious, but also excited. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. But we've received another signal. A different species, from a system 1,200 light-years away. The pattern is almost identical to the original Velthran transmission." Dr. Lee felt her heart skip a beat. "They're dying?"
Yes.
"And they're calling out into space, hoping someone will hear them." Within an hour, Dr. Lee was sitting in the monitoring station where she had first decoded the Velthran message decades ago. The new signal filled the screens around her. The mathematics were different, the language was alien, but the underlying message was heartbreakingly familiar. "We are the Zephyrians of the third world of the star you may know as Kepler 442. Our sun grows too hot. Our oceans boil away. We cannot escape, but we do not wish to be forgotten. Please, if anyone receives this, remember that we tried to fill the universe with wonder." Dr. Lee closed her eyes and remembered her first conversation with Kethmore's consciousness fragment. The joy and amazement in his electronic voice when he realized that someone had actually come to find them. "How long do they have?" she asked. Dr. Jun-Ho Park checked his calculations. "Based on the stellar data, maybe 2 years before their world becomes uninhabitable." "And how long to reach them?" "At maximum speed, using our newest ships, 6 to 7 years." Dr. Lee was quiet for a long time. Around her, younger scientists waited for her reaction. She was the most famous xenologist on Earth, the woman who had first made contact with an alien consciousness. Her opinion carried enormous weight. Finally, she spoke. "We have to go." "Dr. Lee," said one of the younger scientists, "even if we leave immediately, they'll be dead long before we arrive. What's the point?" Dr. Lee looked at him with sad, wise eyes. "The same point there was with the Velthrans. They're not asking us to save them. They're asking us to remember them. And we've learned that remembering means more than just receiving their message." She stood up slowly and walked to the communication console. "Get me Captain So-Young Kim." So-Young Kim appeared on the main screen a few minutes later. She was now 52 years old and commanded the fastest exploration ship in Earth's fleet. She had been just a young pilot on the original mission to Velthra, but the experience had changed her life. "Dr. Lee," So-Young said with a smile, "I heard about the new signal. When do we leave?" Dr. Lee laughed. "You haven't even heard the details yet. Don't need to. Another species is dying alone in the dark. That's all I need to know." Within 6 months, 3 ships were being prepared for the journey to the Zephyrian system. Unlike the single experimental vessel that had gone to Velthra, these ships represented the best of human and Velthran technology combined. They were faster, more efficient, and carried larger crews. Dr. Lee was too old to make the journey herself, but she helped train the new mission teams. Captain So-Young Kim would lead the expedition. Dr. Jae-Won Choi's son, now a brilliant engineer in his own right, would handle communications with alien technology. Even some of the Velthran consciousness fragments volunteered to join the mission, their quantum patterns stored in portable matrices. "We want to help you answer their call," transmitted Kethmore. "We know what it means to die alone. No other species should experience that fear." On the day the ships launched, crowds gathered in cities around the world to watch. The mission had become more than just a scientific expedition. It was a statement about who humanity chose to be in the universe. Dr. Lee stood in the Seoul launch viewing area, surrounded by former colleagues and current students. As the ships disappeared into the star-filled sky, 8-year-old Hao-I tugged on her sleeve. "Grandmother Lee, will you be here when they come back?" Dr. Lee smiled and patted the child's head. "No, dear. I'll be gone by then. But you'll be here. And you'll help welcome our new friends home." High above Earth, the quantum communicators picked up one more signal. This time it wasn't from dying aliens. It was from the Zephyrian system, where automated monitoring stations had detected the launch of Earth's rescue mission. "Someone is coming," the message said. Someone heard our call and is coming to find us. Even across 1,200 light-years, even knowing they would die long before the ships arrived, the Zephyrians were no longer alone. And throughout the galaxy, other dying civilizations began preparing their own final transmissions, knowing now that somewhere among the stars, humans were listening. The bridge between worlds had become a bridge between all thinking beings. And the darkness of space no longer seemed quite so dark.